Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time for us to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Despite the closure of Nigerian land borders by the federal government in the last 3 months, smuggling still persists at the border between Nigeria and Niger Republic. Now, this is according to an investigation by This Day. However, the Nigerian Customs Service has dismissed the observation, calling for either a photograph or video evidence to prove this particular allegation. The NCS also said that it would be impossible for smugglers to operate at any of the country's borders. Now, the investigation revealed that while strict compliance appears to reign at the main border post between the two countries, illegal business is still thriving in some bush paths and sundry illegal entry points where unscrupulous security operatives are working hand in glove with smugglers to smuggle contraband goods into the country. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari had on August 20th this year ordered a joint border security aimed at securing the country's land and also maritime borders. So allegations of smuggling, and there is calling for proof. What's your take on this, Doctor?
Well, I mean, you know, of course, when the decision was taken to close down, to shut down all land borders, starting with the border with the Republic of Benin, we had said, and also concerned stakeholders had also said that this was unsustainable.
Yeah. And
that the government should look for a better strategy for checking the threat of smuggling. The claim by government, of course, was that smuggling, particularly of petroleum products, had reduced. But, of course, other commentators noted that that is not true, that the position of government was not evidence-based. And now you have this investigation by This Day newspaper confirming that in the northern parts of the country, particularly a border town called Jibia, that a lot of smuggling is still going on. And that, you know, this is even going on. What is instructive about that report in This Day today is the indication that this is done with the active connivance and collusion of government officials, including customs officials, immigration officials, you know, the police, and, you know, the military and other security agencies. And it's even indicated that, you know, these smugglers pay as much as 3,000 naira per bag. The clear indication here is that when you try to stop something in Nigeria, you know, you end up driving it further underground.
Creating another avenue.
Because then you create, you even make the smuggling more attractive, you make it more, you know, more lucrative. And that is clearly the import of this report in This Day. Now, well, I do not expect that the Customs Service will openly admit failure or that there is leakage or that there is inefficiency in monitoring the borders. But I think that rather than insist on video evidence, they themselves should go and conduct an investigation. They should see the report in the newspaper as some kind of wake-up call.
Yep.
Some kind of indication that they still need to do a lot more. So to ask, I hope they are not asking the This Day reporters to bring video evidence.
Maybe they should go put up their own CCTVs at the borders.
And they should not dismiss the report just casually like that. Because, you know, what they need to do is, if they say we're doing this, then they do it well. But, of course, in the long run, long term, they should see, of course, that this permanent closure of land borders can only be, at best, a very short-term measure. It cannot be sustained.
And that's why it was extremely worrying when we learned last week that literally all borders had then been shut down to this particular mess, because we thought all land borders, exactly, because we thought that this was a short-term thing, and now it's seeming more prolonged. And that's very worrying, because this is not the solution at all. And I mentioned maybe they should put up their own CCTVs, because this is how we speak of deploying technology to actually find solutions to the problems that we have at hand. It is not sustainable to shut down borders to catch smugglers. You need to deploy technology and use it.
The smugglers have found other routes.
I mean, look how porous the borders are. At the end of the day, if you block down the physical border that you've built, that is really not a border. They're just going to find another route. We need to start using technology. So it's still all just seeming very unserious, and it seems as though the government really haven't thought this through. And that's very worrying. Let's move on to our next story. Now, chief executive officers of commercial banks have distanced themselves from the moves by MTN Nigeria to impose charges on unstructured supplementary service data, as we know typically as USSD transactions. Now, the bank chief executives, under the aegis of body of bank CEOs that have the MD and CEO of Access Bank PLC, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, as their chairman, said in a statement yesterday that they never asked MTN to start charging customers, as contained in the text message sent by the telecommunication company. Their disavowal came a day after the government, or the federal government, ordered MTN to suspend the introduction of service charge on USSD transactions, which was billed to take off yesterday on Monday. The Central Bank of Nigeria Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, had also on Sunday directed commercial banks and other financial institutions to, under its regulation, to shun the moves and impose charges on USSD services. So a very quick move here from the banks to distance themselves from these USSD charges posed by MTN Nigeria. What's your take?
Well, I mean, what the banks have done through the body of bank CEOs is to make it clear that, you know, they were not the ones that asked MTN in this particular case to introduce this new service charge. Because indeed, some of the text messages that were published online, there was in some of those text messages an indication that, oh, your bank has asked us to do this. So clearly they've put out a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Now, and then again, what they have done is in line with the directive that was given by the governor of the central bank, who has been saying that a lot has been achieved in terms of financial inclusion, which is part of the 5-year plan of the central bank, and that, you know, financial inclusion has risen from about 42% to 65%, and that this kind of charge, service charge, could further discourage that financial inclusion objective. And of course, the CBN governor made it clear that he had engaged these telecom companies, and he had told them that, look, you don't need to impose additional charges on customers, because if you were to do so, you know, the use of telecom for banking services could be discouraged, and you could reduce the numbers. So it's good to see the bank CEOs themselves, you know, queuing up behind the central bank, and they themselves are talking about financial inclusion. Now, the other leg of it, they are also accusing the MTN of being the only telecom company that is not, doing end-user billing. But of course, MTN has, reacted to say that that will amount to imposing even more charges on subscribers. But I think that, the response from the MTN is quite combative. The spokesperson for MTN says, well, they don't need to get any approval from the banks for them to introduce the service charge. Well, the banks themselves already take 50 naira. But as we said yesterday, if you introduce another service charge, I mean, that would be a lot of burden on the consumer of telecom services at the rate of 4 naira per 20 seconds, 12 naira per minute. So, and I think MTN has to take another look at its public communication process, because, it keeps having one crisis or the other, all arising from interaction with stakeholders or public communication, strategy, and the ultimate effect on its brand, may not have been measured yet. But I think that, if nothing is done, if no attention is paid to the corrosive effect of the communication problem that MTN seems to be having one after the other, the company may pay for it. In the long run. Because
it's become such a regularity. You're very right about that, Doctor. I actually didn't even put 2 and 2 together on that. Let's move on to another news headline. Now, following the achievements of the past 3 phases of the exercise Crocodile Smile, the military, in conjunction with the police and sister agencies, on Monday launched phase 4 to cover both land and water channels, especially in the creeks of the southwest of the country. Now, the exercise is targeted at flushing oil thieves, kidnappers, pipeline vandalism, illegal dealings in petroleum products, and also taking crude oil in such a way that it destroys the ecosystem. Now, this is just as they clamored for a special tribunal to ensure speedy trial of suspected oil thieves, given the challenge by the delays in the criminal justice system. The exercise, which is going to start from the 8th of November to the 23rd of December, is going to be held simultaneously in 26, 81 and 82 divisions of the Nigerian army. So exercise Crocodile Smile is coming back, and people have quite mixed views about this. But what is your take, Doctor?
Well, I mean, one, the police increasingly, we see the military increasingly getting involved in internal security operations. And the military hierarchy, they keep defending it. It's not just Operation Crocodile Smile. They also have operations in the north. They have what they call Operation Field Operation, something like that, in different parts of the country, including Agueke 4 and some other operations in the north central and northwestern part of the country. Now, they're dealing with banditry, they're dealing with kidnapping. Then maybe we should go on break and then we'll come back and take a look at it.
You're still watching the morning show here on Arise News. Welcome back to the program. And still on news headlines, before the break, Doctor, we were talking about the military taking up Operation Crocodile Smile again, and you were giving us your take on that.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm concerned, because it looks like the military is getting more and more involved in internal operations, in internal security operations. And they are dabbling into things that should be basically the work of the police. The excuse they give is that, they are, using this for training. They are also using this for engagement with their communities in Nigeria, because in previous operations, they had even gone as far as, providing medical facilities in some communities in the South. But, you said in the introduction that they've recorded previous operations have been successful. Not quite. There's been quite a number of misgivings about the military getting involved in police duty. Sure. You will recall that during Operation Crocodile Smile 3, Ijaw youths even protested. They accused the military of extrajudicial killings, of violation of fundamental human rights to dignity and to the liberty of movement, to liberty, basic liberties. So it's not as if there have not been complaints. There have been complaints. Then this time around, they are trying to intensify, their internal security operations. There's something they call Operation Positive Identification, under which umbrella they have this thing they call Operation Ayem Apatuma 4 in the north central and the northwestern part of the country. They have Egueke 4, Operation Egueke 4. I think that's the one they call Operation Python Dance in the eastern part of the country. And then you have this Operation Crocodile Smile 4, in the southwest and the south-south. Now, to what extent can the military continue to do police duty, police work, under the guise of internal security operations? They're targeting oil theft, banditry, kidnapping, other criminal activities within the borders of Nigeria. If the police were properly empowered, this should be the work of the police itself.
Absolutely.
And it's not as if, we've been able to succeed fully. We still have challenges in the northeastern part, of the country with Boko Haram. Will it not be a better, security strategy to allow, the military to focus more, on their core mandate, instead of this use of the military to chase oil thieves, to chase kidnappers, and to chase, common criminals that the police should be empowered to worry about.
And that's exactly, you remember a couple weeks ago, about maybe 2 months ago, and we were discussing the kidnap kingpin, as they called him, Wandume, up in the north. And look at everything that went wrong with that operation, simply because of the entire mix-up over whose responsibility this was, the police or the military. But then it went further to suggest that the military were even involved, maybe, in that particular kidnapping. So it's a very questionable situation when you do have your military doing the work of the police force. It's just like when we heard the military will be deployed onto our highways, when we were faced with a lot of killings going on the highways. And this is stuff that the police are supposed to be doing. So it's very interesting to see this all.
The principle is, look, the military can be drafted where, when things go out of hand, and they can supplement the effort of the police. But they cannot engage in police work on a permanent basis. It's becoming almost a permanent operation.
Absolutely.
And that could discourage, the state from investing more, in the police. And the police needs a lot of support.
They need a lot of empowerment, honestly. Now, let's move on to some international headlines. Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is set to hold on to power in a nail-biter of a general election. Now, Trudeau dominated Canadian politics over the last 4 years of his term, but he's faced with he's been faced with a lot of grilling, during the 40-day election campaign that was described as the nastiest in Canadian history. Now, his golden boy image that, of course, he usually has been tarnished by ethic lapses in the handling of the bribery prosecution of engineering giant SNC-Lavalin, while the emergence of old photographs of him in blackface makeup also rocked up his campaign. Now, surging Social Democrats and resuscitated Quebec separatists appear to have chipped away at Liberal support. Andrew Scheer, meanwhile, struggled to win over Canadians with his bland minivan driving dad persona and a throwback to the thrifty policies of the past Tory administration. So Trudeau is set to return as Canada's Prime Minister, but he certainly hasn't had it easy with everything that's emerged.
Yes, the projection is that the Liberal Party will end up with 156 seats in Parliament, and that's 14 seats short of an outright majority. In 2015, the Liberal Party, led by Justin Trudeau, had a landslide. They don't have a landslide this time. It's a narrow win, despite the fact that they will have most of the seats, 156 as projected. Now, the Conservative Party did quite well. Andrew Scheer, the leader of the Conservative Party, was thought to be somebody who could, replace Justin Trudeau. He's 40 years, but as it turned out, yes, the party also improved. They got up to about 122 seats, and that's a lot from the 92 seats that the Conservative Party had in the 2015 election. But of course, Andrew Scheer, does not have, the celebrity status of Justin Trudeau. And then, of course, you have a guy called Singh, Jagmeet Singh of the left-leaning National Democratic Party. He may be his party may be the decider in Parliament, because what this means, with the narrow win that the Liberal Party has been able to record, they will need to work with other parties. Mm-hmm. That's how it works in Canada. It's better to work with other parties than to form a coalition government. The last time a coalition government was attempted, it collapsed.
Yeah.
Now, what is the election all about? The election, it's a referendum, on Justin Trudeau's performance. In 2015, Justin Trudeau had promised a lot. He's been able to do a lot in terms of child benefit, but he also could not deliver on many of his other promises. Yes, he also legalized marijuana, and that's one way of keeping his, one of the things he did to keep his campaign promises. But he didn't succeed with, the federal electoral reform that he promised. He didn't succeed with the balancing of the budget that he promised. And then, of course, in your introduction, you pointed out some of the ethical scandals that he has had, particularly with the SNC-Lavalin case, 1, 2, the apology that he had to offer over the fact that as a younger person, he had done blackface, brownface, and all of that. 3, there was a controversial trip to India. And then, of course, his visit also to the Aga Khan, was also very controversial. But at the end of the day, he's managed to survive, even if with a narrow win. And he has promised that he will govern for everyone. So congratulations to him and the Liberal Party. Some of the other parties that people thought would do well, for example, it was thought that some of the independents, because there were about 4 or 5 independent candidates, wild cards, who could pull a surprise. That did not happen. The Quebecois party, yes, was able to put up some showing, and then Jagmeet Singh also, but at the end of the day, the Liberal Party is back in power.
Absolutely. And, I mean, they took such a hit that it's really important for them to really focus on how they're going to get their ethics back up now if they really want to get through the next 4 years, because it's quite a tight time for them. Let's take one last story on news headlines. President Donald Trump says that he still wants all U.S. troops out of Syria. But Israel and Jordan have asked him to keep some in Syria. Now, just last week, Trump said that roughly 1,000 American troops in northeastern Syria will go home, leaving about 200 at a base in the southeast of the country. Then officials said that the bulk of the troops would shift to Iraq. Let's take a look.
We're having very good news coming out. The ceasefire is holding. The Kurds are moving out to safer areas beyond the safe zone, as we call it. Having a safe zone is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And plenty of Turks have been killed because of conflict on their border. So, you have to look at it both ways. But the ceasefire is absolutely holding. There's some skirmishes, but very little, relatively speaking. Of course, if you watch the fake news, it's like pretty wild. It's really holding. I've watched these pundits that have been working on this thing for 20 years. They've been working on the Middle East for 20 years. They don't know what they're doing, and they're telling me what to do. They're saying, what did Trump get out of it? What did he get out of it? I'll tell you what I get out of it. We won't be fighting, and we'll bring our soldiers back home. They were supposed to be there for 30 days, and they've been there now for 10 years in Syria. 10 years. They were supposed to go in, do a quick hit on ISIS, and come out. Now, as far as ISIS is concerned, when I took over, November 2016, ISIS was all over the place. I'm the one, meaning it was me and this administration, working with others, including the Kurds, that captured all of these people that you're talking about right now. Because President Obama, it was a mess. And I was told, and you were told, and everybody told, it would be years before you ever did what I did in about a month and a half after I started. I went over to Iraq, I met with our generals. Then we figured out a plan, and it was done within a month and a half. So I'm the one that did the capturing.
Okay.
Well, President Trump, they are referring to the situation in Syria. And then, of course, he talked about the ceasefire. The ceasefire will expire today. It's a 120-hour ceasefire. It will expire at 10 p.m. Local time, 1900 GMT. But I think that there may still be need to further extend the ceasefire. This is a ceasefire that was brokered by U.S. Vice President Mike Pence when he visited Ankara to meet with President Recep Erdogan. Now, the other part of it, of course, is that we should be interested in what comes out of the meeting today between President Recep Erdogan and President Putin. The two of them are meeting at Sochi today. And the issue will be, again, about northern Syria and this safe zone that Turkey is insisting upon, beyond 30 kilometers. Yes, as President Trump pointed out, the Kurds have moved back, and that's beyond, moved back within the range of about 30 kilometers from villages like Al-Ain and other, villages in that part. But as I said, Russia seems now to be a key player, in that particular region, now that the Americans have pulled out and they are protecting oil fields on the request of Israel and Jordan.
A messy situation. That's all that we have on the news headline.